everyone, we're here at the MakeMusic booth at TMEA with JaRod Hall. So, what's your inspiration to compose? What kind of gets you your composition process going?
That's a great question. Quick story, I was in 6th grade, band for the first time, I played tuba, and my band director, Paul Schmidt, was basically a second dad to me, and I spent all my time in the band hall. And I would practice, of course, but when I would get a little too comfortable playing the same line out of the book, that's when Mr. Schmidt would come up and say, "Okay, JaRod, come here. I have a job for you." And he showed me into his office where he had a computer software notation program called Sibelius. And I had never heard of such a thing before. And he says, "JaRod, we need some stuff here. I have all this music, and we're gonna put it into the computer so that we can make a floppy disk." Okay, that tells you how long ago this was. We're gonna make a floppy disk that has recorded all of this music that you're going to type into the computer. Here's the score, start typing. And so I would just transcribe. It was just homework for me, but it was fun homework. And I would just go after it all day. I finished the stack of music. He handed me a stack, probably like this big of music, and I finished it in like a couple of weeks. He thought it would take me the whole year. And he goes, "Wow, thanks. All right, well, we're done. You want to just kind of play around on it?" And said, "Yeah, sure." And I started just typing stuff out that, wouldn't make a whole lot of sense at first, but then I started figuring out what did make sense. And I couldn't tell you how, but suddenly there was something there that didn't exist before. And that's when Mr. Schmidt said, "Hey, this is a composition. That's pretty cool. Like, you made that up. That's really impressive." And I thought, "Really? Doesn't everybody do that?" He goes, No, not quite." And boy, it just stuck with me. Now, of course, the software was about $600, and a 12-year-old kid couldn't really afford that on his own dime, but I would go and get the demo version, and I would install it at my home on my own computer and just arrange stuff that I heard on the radio all the time. If a song ever got stuck in my head, it wound up on my computer later that week. And I got really good at that, and eventually it allowed me to get to a place where I could create stuff for my students when I taught. As a band director, I was constantly giving my students supplemental materials. It's great to have a method book, but I would give more music to them that fit their needs specifically. It's great to kind of learn something to get a certain skill across, but it's even better when you can provide something to your students that's exactly what they need. And so that's what I would do. And eventually that led to me writing not just exercises, but full-blown pieces. And I have to tell you, for me, writing something for my band was way easier than trying to figure out what a purchase order was.
Oh yeah.
Or trying to go through the district, or this dot, this check the box over here. I didn't know any of that. And so I would just write stuff for my band all the time. And there's a special kind of joy that comes from the collaborative process. I would hand the music to my students, we'd play it, and then we get to a spot and I say, stop. What is this? Who wrote this? Oh, sorry, But it's a fun process. And I mean, I blinked and all of a sudden there's a lot of music out there, and I'm just so happy to be able to provide a service like that to folks that want some fresh music.
So do you think that your experience writing for your band helped you become a better composer?
Absolutely. Most of my experience is middle school band, and when you're dealing with beginners, we literally started the year with, this is how you open the case. That's the wrong side. If you open it up that way, it'll fall on it just fell on the ground. Okay. And then you progress all the way through learning skills for the first time to where they can play on their own and be a little more autonomous and learn scales and expand their range to be able to play more than just the first 5 notes. And it's eye-opening to see what students learn within the scope of an academic year in school. And I truly do believe in writing music appropriate for the performer. In this case, with scholastic music and young band music, what skill set do they have at a certain point in time? So my grade 1s are always going to address the areas that offer refinement and a little bit of growth with the skills that they've learned over the first course over the first year of their study. My grade 2s are going to expand their vocabulary and rely on the strengths of tools that they built having 2 years of education and on and on. And so I really got familiar with what students can do, what students like to do, which a lot of times is two different things. And I'll just say from personal experience, my band's always like spooky, scary. Anytime we played anything happy, they were like, yeah, okay. But they love stuff that sounded evil. As soon as I called it evil, they were hooked. So that, I would say, they're my greatest inspiration, my greatest joy, and my giving will. I'm happy to always give back to music education, especially for providing me the start that it did in my career.
Yeah. So what's your process like? Do you usually start with an idea and then develop a melody out of that? You get kind of like an earworm and then develop that into a full piece and the theme comes later? What's kind of your normal process?
Yeah, earworm is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
I write musical sentences. That's my favorite style of composition, is to think melody first and come up with an idea, a basic idea that may be one or two measures in length. And if it sounds good to me and if it sounds interesting to me, I will immediately repeat that very small idea. Mm-hmm. And then going forward to complete my phrase, I will expand upon or continue the musical content that I first wrote, but in a different light. And so it creates this very symmetrical, but also interesting to the listener. My mom went to every concert that I ever put on. I'm not gonna pretend that she was awake for all of them, but it's a different world when you go into a classical concert and maybe there are no words to a band piece where the wind instruments and percussion instruments are hitting and striking and breathing and playing, but there's only so much stimulation in that medium. And so to folks that don't have the exposure to music like that, it may be hard to engage them and relate to them, so to the audience. So I try to just generate a lot of musical interest in my ideas. And I would say I'm a melody person, and I've heard this quote, and I don't know where it's from, but it is said that composers are usually best at one of three things. They are either very good melody makers, they are experts in harmony, or they are masters of rhythm. Usually it's one of the three. And I would say for me, I'm a melody dude. Okay. So I start with that, and then the harmony is kind of based on what melody I make. And I fill in chords and I fill in sounds that I think, again, would be interesting. And bonus if it lays well on the instruments, because we've all been there when we play a note and we're like, why did they even write this? And then of course that informs my rhythm, and so that's kind of my tiered list of that.
Okay, cool. Have you ever run into writer's block when you're writing?
All the time.
All the time? How do you get over that?
It is something that doesn't have a specific process.
Okay.
As soon as I'm struck with writer's block, the first thing that I do is I just stop and I do almost anything else. And it's a little bit inefficient, but it also is less pressure and it's a little more inspired. So when something does come to me, it flows a little better. It's kind of the same principle that I would tell my students, really, is that if for some reason you're practicing and you're doing the right things and you have the right idea, but it's not coming together, you don't have to beat yourself over the head with it for 5, 6, 7 hours. Oh my God, go eat dinner. You know what I mean? But sometimes all you need to do is just sleep on it.
Just get a nice reset.
Yeah, there's something about that, that if you just sleep on it, come back in the morning, that's what the brain is designed to do. While you're asleep, it figures stuff out for you. So get you some rest and then just go to sleep, and then allow your body to do what it does best. And when you wake up in the morning, usually there will be some improvement, some new solution, or at least a fresh take. Maybe we're writing at 2 a.m. I've been there, and you're just sleep deprived, and so you just need a little bit more, CPU up here, as it were. So that's my suggestion for anyone with writer's block. It certainly works for me. I don't know if it's a universal catch-all fix, but it helps to just sleep on it. And if it still is, and I've been there too, where writer's block is so pervasive that even with different perspectives, I could come back to it a day later, a week later, and I'm still somewhat stuck. I will file that away and start on something completely different. And maybe that is what I was meant to write all along. Maybe I'm just now writing a new piece with a new focus, and that may give me some perspective on what I had done earlier. Or maybe I've written the B section to my piece that the A section kind of didn't have anywhere to go, and maybe I could combine the two. I mean, those are just some of the ways, but more often than not, sleep on it.
Great. Do you have any advice for young people, young musicians wanting to get into composing?
Yes. Practice your instrument. Oh my gosh.
You just made every band director in the world so happy.
You know, and I get where y'all are coming from. I do, I feel you. Practice your instrument, know your craft, and just get really good. That is how I became so musical, is through my instrument. My band director, Paul Schmidt, placed a tuba in my hands against my will. Might I add, I wanted to play saxophone. I don't know, maybe everything turned out for the best, I don't know. What do you think, Mr. Schmidt? But you know, it's one of those things where it was something that I just worked at, and I became so familiar with me and what I could do that when I needed to relate it to other instruments, it became second nature. And that's the other thing. Figure out how other instruments work. The computer lies to you. Sibelius is great, no performer is great, I'm with you, I get it. But you can write something on the computer and the computer will play it exactly how you wrote it, and you'll think, yes, that's the best thing ever. And if you hand it to live musicians and they look at you crazy, that needs to tell you something. You need to at least have a frame of reference for each instrument, obviously. As unrealistic as this may be, the best experience you could ever have writing for a group of musicians and understanding the compositional process and how to make things make sense, teach. I learned so much being especially middle school band director and teaching beginners and 7th graders and 8th graders, 6, 7, 8, and I would see in real time, and also each day I would see the progression of what do you learn in the first year? What can you do by the second year? What can 8th graders do on their own, or maybe even start up without? It was the most, every day I would see that stratification. And then of course, year after year, I would also see the longevity of, after a while, this particular student learned this way and they could do these things. There's no greater experience than that, is to be able to learn with the students, learn from the students, and help the students learn. That was the most beneficial for me. The first piece I ever wrote for band that is out here, it's published by FJH and is now being distributed through Alfred Music, is Lost Woods Fantasy. That was my first publication. I didn't write it to be published. I wrote it for my band because I knew I had really good horns. I knew that my trumpets were very good, but they would get very tired very easily. So they didn't play it first, and then they came in and then they killed it and then they rested. I mean, that was something that, again, out of necessity, that I would create. It was almost like my curriculum that I would write for my students. And that was 100% what could they do, what do they need, and what's going to sound cool for them. So as unrealistic as it may be, go teach orchestra, be a band director, lead a chorus line. You learn so much from teaching, and you never know how to do something until you have to tell someone else how to do it.
Sure.
I will tell you right now, and as a tuba player, my tuba class for a while was a little on the lacking side, because I would just say, oh, I don't know, I mean, just play it like me. But you know, but if you dig in and you learn your craft, it goes back to practicing your instrument. Know yourself, know your musicianship, and get really good at what you do, and use that. That's your voice. And so use that to make your music sound like you.
That's great advice. Do you have any new compositions, fun projects you're working on you want to make a plug for?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this entire venture with MakeMusic Publications, I couldn't be happier. I would say that before I took any sort of formal composition at all, the biggest mentor of mine in this whole process was Brian Balmages. And Brian was really good at, like, he would get music from me and tell me, well, hey, like, maybe we need a second trumpet part here. Well, you know what, let's go back and revisit this idea. I think you can make it sound more like yourself in the other sections. This one is a little weird, so maybe go back and revise. Or, hey, this sounds great, can you write another one like it? And I would tell you, just bouncing ideas off of and growing from Brian just total game changer. So this new company, MakeMusic, led by Brian, oh my God, I'm excited. It is the most I've ever written at one time. I think I may have somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 8 pieces that are already published. This year we'll add 6 to 8 more pieces. I will double my catalog.
Wow.
Mostly due to MakeMusic publications. So check them out. It's under the Alfred umbrella. Alfred Music, I mean, the super powerhouse of music that's always been there, man. I mean, now this MakeMusic publications venture is really, really cool. You Better Slay is on there. I know y'all heard about that. You Better Slay, grade 3, a perfect winter holiday mixer, and I used to have to do winter Christmas concerts as band directors, and I felt bad for having to say, okay, well, I know you celebrate this, you celebrate that, it's okay if you sit out, but it wasn't okay with me. I felt so sad, you know. I wanted to include people, and so one of the things I want to do is write music for winter and just have it be a little more universal, a little more multicultural and inclusive. You Better Slay is a holiday medley of all kinds of winter themes all throughout the world in different genres and styles, wrapped around the first 5 notes of Sleigh Ride. And it's funk and it's groovy and you're gonna love it. And there's more where that came from. All my grade 3s that are coming out this year with MakeMusic, Zipline, Keystone. I also have a grade 2 coming out called 3 Minutes to Midnight. If you like Tripwire, you're gonna love that one. And I mean, there's more where that came from. So I'm so excited about this new company.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to talk to us today.
You bet.